How do you build a house for a god? Not a stone cathedral with foundations rooted in bedrock, not a temple carved into the side of a mountain, but a tent, a portable, modular palace designed to be assembled, disassembled, and carried across a brutal, trackless wilderness by hand. There were no power tools in 1450 BC. There were no factories for precision-cut standardized lumber. There were only 600,000 former slaves standing in the salt flats of the Sinai with Egyptian gold and wood harvested from gnarled desert trees. But here is the engineering problem that defies every law of ancient logistics. This tent was essentially a gold-plated fortress. It had to be rigid enough to withstand hurricane-force sandstorms, yet modular enough to be broken down into individual components in minutes. And most importantly, it had to contain a presence so holy and physically volatile that approaching it with a single mathematical or ritual error meant instant death. This is the Tabernacle, the Mishkan. What they constructed in that desert 3,400 years ago wasn't just a place of worship. It was a masterclass in ancient physics and modular design that still baffles engineers today. Today, we are taking apart the portable palace piece by piece to see how a nation of nomads built the most sophisticated mobile structure in human history. The year was approximately 1450 BC. 14 months had passed since the night of the Passover, since the Red Sea parted and the most powerful army on earth drowned in the returning waters. Israel was free, but freedom raised a terrifying question. How does an infinite God stay with a finite, wandering people? The answer didn't come from a committee of human architects. It came from a technical download straight into the mind of Moses on the summit of Mount Sinai. God didn't just give the 10 Commandments. He gave a bill of materials so specific it included the exact alloys of the metal, the chemistry of the dyes, and the exact weight of the silver. But a blueprint is nothing without builders. God handpicked 2 men to lead the project: Bezalel, a master of metallurgy and stone cutting, and Oholiab, an expert in high-end textiles and embroidery. The resources came from a back payment for 400 years of forced labor. The Israelites had stripped Egypt of its gold, silver, and bronze before they left. The women donated their bronze mirrors. The people gave so much jewelry and heirloom metal that Moses eventually had to command them to stop giving because the storehouses were overflowing. But once they had the gold, they faced the ultimate engineering hurdle: the foundation. In a world of shifting sand, how do you keep a golden palace from sinking? How do you build a rigid structure 45 feet long and 15 feet tall that won't blow away in a Sinai gale? The solution was a modular frame system that would make modern aerospace engineers jealous. The bones of the palace were 48 boards cut from acacia wood, the only tree stubborn enough to grow in that desert. Acacia is a dense, twisted fiber that is virtually rot-proof. Each plank was 15 feet high, and every single one was completely overlaid with solid gold. But look at the bottom. This is where the physics of the Mishkan truly shines. Each board had 2 projections called tenons that slid into precision-machined sockets of solid silver. There were 100 of these sockets, each weighing exactly 1 talent, about 75 pounds of pure silver. Why so much weight at the ground level? It was a low center of gravity anchor. By concentrating all that mass at the base, the architects ensured that when the winds screamed across the camp, those 15-foot gold walls didn't budge. They were held fast by the sheer gravity of the silver. And the genius went deeper. 5 horizontal bars ran through gold rings on the walls, locking them into a single, unshakable unit. But the middle bar was the secret. It ran inside the wood itself, acting as an invisible spine that held the entire structure rigid. You couldn't see it, but without it, the palace would have buckled under its own weight. Even more profound, those silver sockets were cast from the ransom money paid by every single Israelite man. The entire palace literally stood on the price of human redemption. The skeleton was up, gold walls standing on silver feet. But a palace in the desert needs a roof that does more than look good. It has to be a tactical life support system. The tabernacle didn't have one roof, it had 4 layers stacked on top of each other. The interior glory, 10 curtains of fine linen embroidered with blue, purple, and scarlet threads. Master craftsmen stitched cherubim, angelic figures, directly into the fabric. When a priest looked up, he didn't see a tent, he saw heaven stretched overhead. The climate control, a second layer made of goat hair. This was brilliantly practical. When goat hair gets wet, the fibers swell and seal, making the roof 100% waterproof. When it dries, the fibers relax and allow the structure to breathe. It was natural air conditioning. The insulation, a third layer of ram skins dyed deep red. It provided thermal insulation and an extra layer of waterproofing. The weather shield. The final outermost layer was the skin of the takash, likely a sea cow or dugong from the Red Sea. It was a tough, dull, gray-brown leather that was virtually indestructible against sand and sun. This created a profound psychological contrast. From outside the camp, the tabernacle looked like a weathered, ordinary tent of animal hides. It blended into the desert landscape. But the moment you stepped inside, the atmosphere changed. It was gold everywhere, light dancing on polished metal, and angels woven into the ceiling. The glory was hidden from the world. You had to be invited in to see it. Before you could reach the gold, you had to pass through the bronze. The courtyard was a massive rectangle of white linen curtains, 150 feet long. It blazed in the desert sun, pure and blinding, and there was only one way through it, a single embroidered gate on the east side. One way in, no back doors. The moment you stepped through that gate, you were hit by the bronze altar. This wasn't a place of beauty, it was a place of sacrifice. It was massive, 7.5 feet square, covered in bronze to withstand the constant, roaring heat of the fires. Every single day, animals died here. Beyond the altar stood the bronze laver, a massive basin filled with water. And here is the detail that always stops me. The laver was made from the melted down bronze mirrors of the women who served at the entrance. They traded seeing their own reflection for the purity of the priests. The instruction was absolute. Wash your hands and feet at this basin or die. The message of the courtyard was a brutal reality check. You cannot approach the infinite God without a price being paid and a cleansing being performed. Once the priest was washed, he stepped through 5 gold-covered pillars into the holy place. The temperature dropped instantly. The noise of the hundreds of thousands of people outside vanished into a heavy, sacred silence. There were no windows. The only light came from the menorah, a lampstand hammered from 75 pounds of pure gold. The eternal light. To the south, the menorah burned pure, beaten olive oil that never went out. The bread of the presence. To the north, the table of showbread held 12 loaves representing the tribes arranged before God's face every day. The cloud of prayer. Straight ahead, at the center, was the altar of incense, where a sacred, forbidden recipe of smoke rose toward the ceiling. But even here, the journey wasn't over. There was one more curtain. The veil. It was thick, heavy, and guarded by embroidered cherubim that stood like woven sentinels. Beyond that was the Holy of Holies, a perfect cube of 15 feet in every direction. It was pitch black. The only light was the Shekinah, the radiant presence of God Himself. Inside this darkness sat the Ark of the Covenant, a gold-covered chest containing the evidence of human failure. the broken law, the rejected manna, and the challenged authority. But the lid, the mercy seat, was solid hammered gold. 2 angels looked down at the space between them. That tiny space was the throne of the Creator of the universe. On the first day of the first month of the second year, Moses finished the work. Every silver socket was in the sand, every gold bar was locked, and every piece of gold was polished to a mirror finish. Then it happened. The pillar of cloud, the same one that stood between Israel and Pharaoh's chariots, descended and covered the tent. The glory filled the tabernacle so powerfully that even Moses, the man who spoke to God face to face, could not enter. This wasn't a vision, it was a habitation. An infinite God moved into a mobile house built by former slaves. For the next 40 years, wherever the cloud moved, the portable palace followed. Wherever it stopped, they dropped the silver sockets into the sand. The tabernacle was more than a tent. It was a declaration. It said that God didn't want to live in a distant, unapproachable heaven, but in the center of the camp, near enough to hear. It was a structure built on the redemption of silver foundation sockets and shielded by the sacrifice of ram skins. It was an engineering impossibility that proved one thing: if you follow the blueprint to the millimeter, the glory will show up. If you were standing in that desert, watching that massive pillar of fire descend onto a tent made of animal skins, what would be going through your mind? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one.